morning, faith community. I am truly humbled to share my lived experience of being a father in this moment. An upfront disclaimer, I do not have fatherhood figured out. I'm still very much in the thick of it. I am blessed with 4 delightful, determined, and dazzling daughters, Kiara, Ina, Maeve, and Maureen. And I share the absolutely life-giving and downright exhausting job of parenting with my life partner, Amy Finnegan, whose fierce and generous spirit rises out of a deep reservoir of hope. 20 years into marriage and 11 years into fatherhood, my roots and branches are well intertwined with theirs. Our home is bursting at the seams with the magic and energy of childhood. Half-finished art projects and streaks of colored crayons decorate the walls. Oodles of long-ago dried-up markers still linger in the marker bins. Spontaneous dance parties erupt. And yes, there are nightly opportunities to take home a medal for the loudest voice at dinner. When we do have dinner table conversation, our daughters like to play the game, which parent would you go to? Here are a few recent examples. If you want a blizzard at the Dairy Queen, talk to mom. If you want to reserve and check out a very specific book at the library, talk to dad. If you want a cheese quesadilla that's a bit burnt on the edges but ready when you're hungry, talk to mom. If you want fancy homemade mac and cheese and a delicious chocolate beet cake for dessert, but you won't be able to eat it until it's practically bedtime, talk to dad. If you want to go to a party bubbling with extroverted energy, talk to mom. And if you want to go on a Boundary Waters trip with 4 very young children and face the panic of not finding a campsite after 5 hours of paddling while the sun sets, talk to dad. So being a dad in this moment we inhabit. Wow. To be truthful, I struggle a lot with the template of fatherhood that society thrust upon me when I became a dad. That template says be hardworking, tough, protective, competitive, steady, and without emotion. And as the father of 4 daughters, that template also often asks, where are the sons? I can't count the number of times that people of all genders have suggested that not having a son means I'm somehow deprived. It ranges from the subtle inquiry, are you going to go for 5 kids? To the very pointed judgment, oh, I'm sorry, all girls? Despite the external expectations, I as a father and we as a family found our groove with co-parenting, dual immersion, Spanish school here in Minneapolis, 2 life-giving jobs, and an annual family trip to Uganda to teach social medicine with friends there. And then the last 2 years arrived. For our family, these years have included kindergarten, 2nd grade, and 4th grade by iPad. Our joyous return to in-person school last spring was interrupted first because of community safety concerns during Derek Chauvin's trial, and then because it was dangerously hot in public schools without air conditioning. These 2 years have also included choking on thick, smoky air while camping last summer, seeking the help of therapists to calm crippling anxiety, and talking over and over again as a family about how it could be that yet another person of color was unjustly killed by the police in our community. As a white-bodied family with considerable privilege, the full force of these unrelenting blows has no doubt been softened by stable income, safe housing, and a social network of support, which includes 4 healthy grandparents. In my work as a primary care provider in a refugee clinic in St. Paul, I have witnessed the blows landing much, much harder. I have sat with fathers risking their lives to earn a modest income as meat packers while COVID tore through the factory floor. And I have had other fathers come in with unrelenting insomnia, up all night, worrying about children they may never see again, because of our country's harsh immigration policies. As a parent, part of our job is to reassure our children and tell them it's going to be okay. But honestly, over the last 2 years, I have wondered more than ever whether it's actually going to be okay. A climate emergency, racial oppression, and a global pandemic, all hundreds of years in the making, have shaken me to the core. What felt safe and secure doesn't any longer. Jaw-dropping news has exhausted me. Things I believed to be virtuous have been exposed as fundamentally rotten. And in the midst of all that, can I really reassure my children with integrity? Amy and I have also wrestled with how much of the world to let through our front door. What do we tell the kids? What do we hold back in order to protect them? We have leaned in the direction of letting a whole lot in through the front door. And that has borne some beautiful, deeply hopeful fruit. I've heard our 5th grade daughter, Kiara, ask people why they are buying Driscoll raspberries when they treat their workers so poorly. Or at a recent tour of St. Anthony Falls, she asked the park rangers why they aren't more fully naming how this land was stolen from indigenous people. But it also comes with its costs. After walking in solidarity with racial justice protests around Hennepin County Courthouse as the jury deliberated Derek Chauvin's verdict, our whole family's nervous systems trembled in distress from the rawness of that moment. Should we not have gone? Have we crossed a line? Maybe it's just easier to slam the door shut and bolt it. So where do I stretch for guidance as a dad in the midst of these dizzying times? I reach towards other fathers. To prepare for today, I asked a few fathers I deeply respect what they'd say. My own dad said, "This time demands that dads listen humbly and carefully to their children and help their children to be gentle with themselves and others." Willie Alex Oliris, a Ugandan nurse with whom I collaborate, said, "We have to do all we can in our respective capacities to keep the spirit of togetherness, even when we are feeling lonely." And Jim Bear Jacobs, a local indigenous storyteller, pastor, and racial justice leader, shared a lesson that his 3-year-old taught him. We were reading a book when she was 2 or 3 titled Wings with Things, and she looked up and said, "If you give me wings, I promise I will not fly away." Since that day, I've endeavored to give my children wings. As I name other fathers, I'm also reminded of how many fathers we don't get to learn from. Police violence, mass incarceration, and war deprive so many of their chance for full fatherhood. Others, because of homophobia or transphobia, are made to feel there isn't any room around the table of fatherhood for them. Today on Juneteenth, I pray that we summon the wisdom of all those people here to this space. Without them, we are truly sapping the strength of our society, as Dr. Kamara Jones, a prophetic voice on racism and health, has said. Like my dad and Jim Bear, I also reach towards our children. A few weeks ago, our family sat down around the dinner table to talk about the Uvalde school shooting. We felt it was important for our kids to hear directly from us about the senseless violence in our society. Conversation that families of color know too well. I fumbled into the discussion wondering if they'd have anything to say. After sharing some basic information, they had plenty to say. Kiara, our 11-year-old, wanted more details. "Dad, did this happen in an elementary school?" Maeve, who's 7, asked, "Dad, could this happen to us?" Ina, almost 9, said, "You mean people can just go in a store and buy guns? Well, that's going to have to change." And then Ina, near the end of our conversation, turned to her big sister and said, "Kiara, that's why you're going to have to become president someday." I sensed in that moment that our kids can hold the hard stuff and are already dreaming us towards where we need to go. And finally, I reach towards healing spaces that threaten the status quo. Last summer, our family spent a great deal of time supporting the indigenous lead water protectors working to stop the construction of the Line 3 oil pipeline. In July, we camped as a family overnight with the water protectors on the banks of the Shell River, where just upstream, active drilling was happening. In the morning, I unzipped our tent and peered out to magnificence. Straight ahead, there were children and adults frolicking in the pristine water. There were others doing body work on a couple of mats on the ground. There was a community kitchen where 5 or 6 people were preparing breakfast for the 50 to 75 people in the camp. Another group was busy painting posters proclaiming that water is life. If there is a heaven, that would be my vision of it. Being in that space was an absolute antidote to despair and a beautiful reminder that the kind of human flourishing that I dream of for my kids is already here if we look for it. Julie Madden asked if I share this morning how we held it all together as a family during a global pandemic, and I'd be lying if I claimed we held it all together. Rather, I think it's all fallen apart, and perhaps that is what we most needed. Before becoming parents, Amy and I came across a quote we really liked by Ken Wiwa, the son of legendary Ohlone human rights activist Ken Saro-Wiwa. He said, "All of us have a choice in the world to make our children safe for the world or to make the world safe for our children." At this point in my dad journey, I find these words insufficient. For the time being, we are keeping the front door open, believing that we must figure out how to gently choose both our children and the world, all while remembering that we also need our children to help make the world safer for us all. Thank you.